Hello there. This is Peter Felton, your familiar Muni mathematician and author. But in case you didn't know, I am also a history teacher. American history is my specialty, but I have also taught world history as well as American and world geography. I know for a fact that some of my students, both current and former, have subscribed to my YouTube channel. Again, I thank you, and I thank other people too who have subscribed. So, in the words of Marvin Gaye, can I get a witness? I'm here today to talk about the 2020 presidential election that is in full swing. As we know, Donald Trump is the incumbent, and former Vice President Joe Biden is the presumed Democratic nominee. He has yet to accept the nomination, but that will happen in the due course of time. I think they are estimating around August of this year. And of course, he's holding us all in suspense as to who his running mate will be. We do know that it will be a woman because he guaranteed that the day he had his one and only Democratic primary debate with former 2020 Democratic candidate for president and current Vermont state senator and former 2016 Democratic candidate for president, Bernie Sanders. So, I'm here today not to give you my opinion on the election or any of the candidates involved, but rather more a historical parallel analysis. So, for starters, Donald Trump, effective November 8th, 2016, which was the night in the wee hours of the morning actually on November 7th, 2016, that he was elected America's 45th president. Now, at the time, he was 70 years old. Just 2 weeks ago, he turned 74. Before Donald Trump's election to the White House, Ronald Reagan, who was our nation's 40th president from 1981 to 1989, was the oldest president elected in November of 1980 at the age of 69. And he was just a few weeks short of turning 70 when he was inaugurated president in January of 1981. Ronald Reagan served 8 years in the White House. In 1984, when he ran for re-election, he was 73 years old. So this year, Donald Trump has beaten his record again in terms of him being 74 years old as he runs for re-election. Will he win re-election in November? Will Joseph Biden beat him? We'll just have to see. But remember, if you are born in 2002 or earlier, do everyone a favor, especially yourself, and get out there and vote. It doesn't matter who you vote for, you just have to vote. Register to vote if you haven't already. Get out there and vote at the polls or vote by mail before or on this November. All right. Here are some more historical parallels regarding this election. Mainly due to the fact that the two leading candidates are two old white men. That is, of course, nothing new in American history, but it is the first time we have had two white men as the two front-runners in 16 years. In 2008, we had Barack Obama and the late Arizona State Senator John McCain. 2012, we had Barack Obama again, running against former Massachusetts governor and current Utah State Senator Mitt Romney. In 2016, it was Donald Trump versus former First Lady, former New York Senator, and former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton. So the past three election cycles have had different combinations. Every single Republican nominee was a white male, but the Democratic nominees were of different demographics. This year, for the first time since 2004, with John Kerry having run against George W. Bush and lost the presidency to him in 2004, we have, again, a Caucasian male in Biden versus another Caucasian male in Trump. But in terms of Biden guaranteeing that he will pick a woman to be his running mate, well, this is not the first time in history that this has happened. In 2008, then Arizona State Senator and GOP nominee for that year's presidential election, John McCain, nominated then Alaska Governor Sarah Palin to be his running mate. Rewind the tape 24 years to 1984. Democratic nominee Walter Mondale, who was 39th U.S. President Jimmy Carter's vice president, elected New York State Representative in the House of Representatives, Geraldine Ferraro, to be his running mate. So this has occurred twice before, in which Democratic candidates, who were men and white, elected to nominate women to be their running mates. Now, to date, Walter Mondale and John McCain did not win their presidential elections. So some people may say, well, it was because they chose women to be their running mates. Some people say absolutely not. It had to do with bigger factors. What's your opinion? Feel free to share. Again, I'm completely biased, but I will, of course, vote via absentee ballot for a president this year in this coming election, as well as other people holding offices too. Let's look at the age factor. If Joe Biden wins this election, he will be the oldest president at his first and second term. Now, what I mean by that is that at 78 years old, he's the oldest president to run for his first term, but he's also older than Trump currently is and than Ronald Reagan was when they are each running for their second terms in the White House. Biden, of course, is not the first presidential candidate to be older than Trump upon his first term. In 2008, John McCain was 72 years old. In 1996, GOP nominee, Kansas State Senator Bob Dole, was 73 when he ran against and ultimately lost the White House to 42nd President William Jefferson, aka Bill Clinton, husband of Hillary Clinton. But here's something else that Joe Biden bears in common with Ronald Reagan on the age front. Ronald Reagan was born in 1911. He was older than several presidents before him. He was 13 years older than Jimmy Carter. He was 1 year older than Gerald Ford. 2 years older than Gerald Ford. He was also 2 years older than Richard Nixon. He was only 3 years younger than Lyndon Baines Johnson, or LBJ, but Reagan was 6 years older than John F. Kennedy before LBJ. So going back to 1960, fast forwarding the tape to 1980, Reagan was older than presidents spanning a 20-year period. Now let's look at Biden, for example. At age 78, he is older than the current president by 4 years. He is older than Barack Obama by 19 years. And remember, he was Barack Obama's vice president. Biden is also older than George W. Bush and Bill Clinton by 4 years each. They were born in 1946, just like Donald Trump. Biden is also older than Hillary Clinton, who was the 2016 Democratic nominee, by 5 years. She was born in 1947. But yeah, and then before Bill Clinton, we had George H.W. Bush, who was born in 1924, so he's definitely older than Biden. But the fact that Biden is older than 4 predecessors, and the current president at that, in terms of the year he was born, age is a factor. Speaking of which, a lot of people voting for Biden believe that he will only serve 1 term in office if he wins, because he will be 82 years old at the conclusion of his first term in office if he wins the presidency. That means that, with his running mate being a woman, she, whoever she will be, could very well step into Biden's shoes before 2024 if he happens to pass on while in office or die in office, and then by constitutional law, his running mate, vice president, would step up to the bat without actually having a baseball thrown at her. Or, if Biden serves his first term to completion and then steps down because due to age, campaigning, and then serving for another 4 years at most, it could catch up with him at age 82, then his female vice president would become the GOP nominee, the Democratic nominee in 2024. And she would run up against whoever the Republican GOP nominee would be that year. Maybe she would win, maybe she wouldn't. But again, that's all in the future. So there are a lot of different parallels here that are quite intriguing. And they will definitely play a role in determining who wins the White House in November of 2020. And of course, there's a big debate going on now about the vote by mail or voting via absentee ballot. Most Americans still go to the polls. They will line up bright and early before the sun rises to vote in the morning. They'll wait until long hours of the night after they get off work in darkness and cold November weather to vote in the evenings. Most polls close at 8 o'clock p.m., their time zone, with the West Coast closing their polls the last because it's the latest time in all of the country, minus Hawaii, which is 3 hours behind. So technically Hawaii is the last state, but as a time zone, the Pacific Standard Time Zone and the West Coast states of Washington, Oregon, and California are the final states that close their polls. So a lot is at stake, but you know, who knows what might happen. A lot of Biden supporters are also voting for him due to his selection for a female running mate because they feel that that would be a surefire way to get a woman into the White House. Hillary Clinton didn't win. Sarah Palin, Geraldine Ferraro as running mates, their candidates didn't win. Other women who've run for president, including Shirley Chisholm, who was the first black woman to run for president in 1972. She lost the Democratic Party nomination to Governor George McGovern, and he ultimately lost the presidency to Richard Nixon, who was the 37th president and achieved his second term in office before resigning 2 years later due to the Watergate scandal. Tricky Dick did it again. Now, going back 100 years from there, Victoria Woodhull was the very first woman to run for president, period. This was in 1872 against 18th U.S. President Ulysses S. Grant. Now, America was still in the process of Reconstruction following the Civil War. And of course, given the time in history it was absolutely unheard of for a woman to even be considered qualified for being president. Those are not my words. That's what history dictates. Just putting it out there. But nevertheless, she ran a campaign and made history as the first woman ever to run for president. And for the record, she was Caucasian or white. But yeah, this year, as we saw in the Democratic primaries, more and more women are running for president or were running for president. Elizabeth Warren, Amy Klobuchar, Kamala Harris. One of Biden's running mates considerations is former 2018 Georgia gubernatorial candidate Stacey Abrams. So many to choose from. And for fellow San Franciscans, London Breed, our current mayor, is only the second woman mayor in San Francisco history and the first black woman mayor. The first woman mayor was white girl Dianne Feinstein, for lack of a more detailed description. And also, England has had its second female prime minister in the form of Theresa May. This was back in 2018, around the time of Brexit. But since then, Boris Johnson, who some people compare to Trump, has stepped up. The first prime minister of England was Margaret Thatcher from 1979 to 1990. And she and Ronald Reagan were the best of friends. All right. That's today's history lesson for you. And always make sure to brush up on the news and formulate well-educated opinions based on your beliefs and the information that you attain based on how you and your thought process operate. All right. Take good care. Keep sheltering safely in place. Wear masks if you go out on the town. And as always, we are in this together. Take good care. This is your favorite history teacher, Peter Felton, signing off for now.